I am Benjamin Scott, 30 years old, and my life revolves around the gleaming cars in my family's car dealership in Portland. Every morning I wake up early, brew a strong black coffee, and drive my old Ford to work. Portland in autumn is cool and crisp, with golden leaves drifting down the streets. But today the air felt somehow heavier than usual. I sensed it the moment I stepped into the dealership, a modern glass building where luxury cars are displayed under bright LED lights, their reflections shimmering on the polished granite floor. This is the small empire of the Scott family. My father, Wesley, is the boss. My mother, Nancy, handles the finances, and my older brother, Declan, always acts as though he is the rightful heir. As for me, I'm just the sales team leader, the one who diligently deals with paperwork and customers. But at least I love the job. It gives me a sense of control, even if it's only an illusion. This morning I started the day as always. I sat at my desk in the corner of the main showroom where I could oversee the entire display area. Customer files were scattered across the table, printouts filled with details about appointments, preferences, and budgets. I carefully arranged them in alphabetical order, checking for any missed meetings. Mr. Johnson has an appointment to see the Tesla Model S at 10. I muttered to myself, marking it on the calendar. Then I stood up and did my usual round of the showroom. The brand new cars, with their scent of leather and fresh paint, always made me smile. I lightly wiped dust from the windshield of a Mercedes-Benz and checked that the headlights worked. Everything had to be perfect. That was my rule. This dealership doesn't just sell cars, it sells dreams. And I'm the one who keeps those dreams shining. Suddenly, the front glass door chimed as it opened. I looked up and my heart tightened. An old man walked in looking as though he belonged to another world entirely. He was around 60, perhaps older, dressed in faded, patched-up clothes. His threadbare wool jacket, jeans frayed at the hems, and sneakers worn through to the inner lining. He moved slowly, wearily, as if he had been wandering all night in Portland's light drizzle. His face was deeply wrinkled, his beard gray and unkempt, his eyes sunken beneath bushy eyebrows. He carried nothing but an old canvas bag slung over his shoulder, and a faint, musty smell followed him into the clean, sterile air of the dealership. Before I could react or decide how to greet him, hurried footsteps echoed from the back office. My father, mother, and brother Declan rushed out as if a fire alarm had gone off. Their faces darkened the instant they saw the old man standing in the middle of the showroom. My father, Wesley Scott, a tall man always impeccably suited, turned red with anger. My mother, Nancy, with her curled hair and red lipstick clutching her ledger, stopped abruptly. And Declan, my tall, slick-haired brother with his perpetually arrogant expression, strode straight toward the old man like a hunting dog. "Security! Get him out of here right now!" Declan shouted, gesturing sharply at the guard standing in the corner. His contempt was unmistakable, eyes narrowed, mouth twisted, as if the old man's presence was a disease, a stain sullying the elegant space of the dealership. I watched him wave dismissively as if shooing a fly. My heart beat faster. Why were they reacting like this? This is a car dealership, not a private club. But I knew the reason. My family has always prioritized image. Customers must be wealthy and refined, not someone who looks like this. The old man paused briefly at their harsh reaction. He stopped walking, his gaze slowly sweeping across the vast showroom. The gleaming cars lined up neatly under the lights, then back toward my parents. His voice remained calm, almost gentle. "I just want to look at the cars a little. I don't mean anything else." His voice was hoarse but clear, without trembling or pleading, just a simple request, like any customer walking in. My father let out a loud, mocking laugh that echoed through the cold glass space. He pointed directly at the old man's tattered clothes. "You want to look at cars? This isn't a place for people like you to browse for fun. With the way you look, you're not even qualified to touch one, let alone buy it." His tone was sharp, as if driving away someone unworthy. I felt the blood rush to my face. The man had only said he wanted to look. My mother immediately chimed in. her voice shrill and hurried, eyes darting around the showroom as if afraid someone might witness the scene. "Wesley is right. People like you only make real customers uncomfortable. This is a high-end dealership, not a place anyone can wander into. You'd better leave before others get the wrong idea about the kind of guests we entertain." She waved him away, her face full of worry. To my mother, everything revolved around image, and in her eyes, the old man's presence was an intolerable blemish. The old man didn't argue or get angry. He simply observed each contemptuous face in silence. His eyes were calm but deep and unreadable, like a dark pool at the bottom of a well. He looked at my father, then my mother, then Declan, and finally rested his gaze on me. There was no resentment, just observation. My heart pounded. There was something about this old man that unsettled me. Not his appearance, but that calm demeanor. As if he knew something we didn't. Discomfort rose sharply inside me like a surging wave in my chest. I couldn't let this scene continue. I quickly stepped forward, placing myself between Declan and the old man. "Come on, everyone, don't act like this. Any customer is a customer. Once someone walks in here, they're a guest of the dealership. No distinction between rich and poor. Whether they buy or not, we shouldn't treat them this way. Let me talk to him." I tried to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. Declan whipped around, glaring at me. "What's wrong with you, Ben?" he growled. "Get him out!" I ignored him, gently taking the old man's arm, his skin dry and cold, and led him to the consultation table in the corner of the showroom. I pulled out a chair for him, then poured a glass of water from the nearby filter, just as I would for any other customer. "Please have a seat. Here, drink some water. What can I help you with?" I asked, forcing a smile even though my hands trembled slightly. While I calmly tried to understand what the old man really wanted, he said he just wanted to look at cars and wasn't ready to buy yet. My parents and brother stood behind us with visibly displeased expressions. Declan leaned in close and muttered sarcastically, loud enough for me to hear, "Ben's at it again, wasting time on someone who can't even afford a tire." My father gave a soft snort, his eyes sweeping over the old man with disdain. "Does he think this is a place where anyone can come in and look around? This dealership is a premium display space, not somewhere people can satisfy their curiosity." My mother shook her head, her low voice full of irritation. "Ben, you're making a mess of everything. This isn't a museum where anyone can come in for free." The other staff in the dealership stole glances at us with puzzled looks. There were about a dozen people, from the young receptionist to the technicians, some whispering behind our backs, "What's wrong with Boss Ben? Why bother?" Others avoided eye contact, burying themselves in their work. No one dared speak up openly. Clearly, they thought my actions were unnecessary, that I was inviting trouble. I could feel those stares pricking my skin. Why? Just because the old man looked poor? My heart beat harder, tension spreading through me. I knew I was going against my entire family, but I couldn't stop. Something told me this wasn't an ordinary encounter. I kept my composure, ignoring the sarcasm. I was determined to treat the old man like a real customer, even though it was clearly making my family furious. "What kind of car are you interested in, sir? Sedan or SUV?" I asked gently. The old man smiled faintly for the first time and said, "You're a good person, young man." Those words sent a chill through me. The suspense rose. What would happen next? I tried to keep the smile on my face, but inside I was in turmoil. The old man's compliment sounded like a prophecy, or perhaps just my imagination after days of exhaustion. The dealership was busier than usual today, with a few potential customers wandering around the display area. A middle-aged couple was admiring the BMW X5, whispering about its hybrid engine. Sarah, the new employee, was brewing coffee at the counter, stealing glances in our direction. The atmosphere was still heavy from the earlier confrontation. The staff's whispers buzzed like bees, and I could feel Declan's razor-sharp glare boring into my back. He was still standing there, arms crossed, his face flushed with barely contained anger. My father kept shaking his head while my mother whispered something to him. Probably. Let's see what stunt Ben pulls next. The old man took another sip of water, his deep eyes studying me as if evaluating something. I'm not too picky, he said slowly, his hoarse voice suddenly carrying an unexpected vitality. But first, let me ask you, how do they treat people here? Is everyone truly welcomed? The question caught me off guard. It wasn't about cars. It felt like a deeper probe. I glanced quickly at my family and saw Declan moving closer as if preparing to interrupt. Of course, sir, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We welcome everyone. Cars are for everyone, after all. But deep down, I knew it was a lie. My family always screened customers, those who looked promising, the ones in shiny suits who arrived in luxury vehicles. The old man nodded, but his faint smile faded. He looked around the showroom, his gaze lingering on Declan, then on my parents. Suddenly the air fell silent, as if everyone sensed a cold wind passing through. And then, while every eye in the dealership, staff, scattered customers, and my own family was still fixed on us, the old man slowly reached inside his jacket. The movement was so deliberate that my heart pounded. Were his hands trembling, or was I imagining it? The threadbare jacket shifted, revealing torn lining, and he pulled out something small and glossy black. He placed it gently on the consultation table with a soft clack that sounded like a time bomb ticking. I leaned in to look. It was a black card, thin, yet radiating an aura of strange authority. Not an ordinary credit card, its surface gleamed, with metallic veins sparkling under the LED lights. No name, no elaborate logo. Just a faint series of numbers and a diamond-shaped emblem in the corner. I had never seen anything like it, but instinct told me it wasn't fake. The motion caught the attention of nearby staff. Sarah, holding a coffee cup, froze, her eyes widening. Then Mike, one of the technicians, involuntarily exclaimed, "Oh my God, that's the black card, the legendary black card." His voice echoed in astonishment, causing the entire showroom to turn sharply toward us. The air in the room instantly froze. The whispers stopped mid-sentence, replaced by a deathly silence. I could hear my own ragged breathing, my heart thundering like war drums. I had vaguely heard of them. Cards reserved for the ultra-wealthy major investors who could open doors anywhere, from banks to secret deals. But how could this old man have one? And how did Mike recognize it? He had worked at a larger dealership before, perhaps he had seen one. My parents gasped, their faces changing dramatically. My father, Wesley, went from flushed red to ashen white, his mouth hanging open like a stranded fish. My mother, Nancy, covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide in panic. Declan stood frozen, his face turning pale as if he had just realized something irreversible. He took a step back, his trembling finger pointing at the card. "No way, that can't be." His voice stuttered, the earlier arrogance gone. I stared in shock at the card on the table, not yet grasping what was happening, but a strong sense of unease surged through me. My heart raced wildly, cold sweat running down my spine. What kind of joke was this? Who was this old man? Why was everyone reacting like this? I glanced at him and saw he remained perfectly calm, as if watching a play unfold. The old man was in no hurry. He straightened in his chair, his voice now stronger, no longer hoarse or weary. "I am Clarence Morgan, strategic investor in the automotive industry, the one who decides major deals." The words hit like lightning. Clarence Morgan? I froze as I realized this old man was the anonymous investor our family dealership had been waiting for months. The very person we had desperately hoped to meet, the one who could pour millions of dollars into expanding the dealership. We had sent emails, made calls, even prepared detailed business plans. My father had bragged about this big shot in family meetings, saying that if we landed him, the dealership would reach a new level. And now, he was sitting right here, in homeless attire, after we had just tried to chase him away like an intruder. The world around me spun. My mind went blank, filled only with a distant ringing in my ears. It couldn't be. Clarence Morgan. The name echoed heavily in my head, suffocating. I suddenly remembered the sleepless nights drafting investment proposals, the times my father grew frustrated because he couldn't reach the elusive investor he had been counting on for months. And now, that man was standing before me, in the appearance we had just publicly humiliated. My chest tightened. My breathing quickened. I didn't know what would happen next. Whether the dealership would lose its one golden opportunity, or worse, whether we had just destroyed everything with our own hands before realizing it. In stark contrast to my stunned silence, my parents and Declan reacted almost instantly. They rushed to the table, crowding around in panic denial. My father let out a loud laugh, but it was dry and forced. "You're joking, right? Clarence Morgan? You think we're naive enough to believe this? That card is fake, a cheap scam." My mother immediately joined in, her voice shrill with tension. "Exactly. We know who Clarence Morgan is. A billionaire couldn't possibly look like this. Security, call the police." Declan stood beside them, his face drained of color, stammering in anger and fear. "You're a fraud. Hand over that card. It's counterfeit." The three of them surrounded the table tightly, pointing accusingly at the black card, their faces flushed with a mix of rage and terror. Clarence didn't argue or defend himself. He simply said slowly, his voice calm but firm, "Have a senior manager verify the information associated with this card." The showroom air froze once more. I looked at Clarence. There was no anger in his eyes, only deep, cold disappointment. My father hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly nodded toward Mike, the technical manager who had access to the authentication system. Mike stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly as he took the card. He swiped it through the reader at the counter. Everyone held their breath. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The machine emitted a short beep, then the screen lit up. Mike leaned in, his lips moving silently before he read aloud, his voice faltering. "Name confirmed. Clarence Morgan. Linked account. Morgan Investments. Authorization level. Highest VIP. Information. Completely valid." After thorough verification, Mike checked the codes and made a quick confirmation call to the affiliated bank. He confirmed everything was authentic, from the card to the old man's identity. In that moment, whispers erupted throughout the dealership again, but this time without contempt. Instead, there was confusion, curiosity, and caution. Declan staggered back, his face ghostly pale, clutching his head. My parents stood frozen, mouths agape. I remained seated, my mind reeling. Why would a powerful investor like this appear disguised as a homeless man? Was he testing us? Or was it some cruel prank? Then Clarence spoke, his voice clear, cutting through the chaos. "I didn't come here to buy a car. I came to observe and evaluate the people in this dealership." The words exploded like a bomb. My heart pounded at its peak. He had seen everything, the contempt, the discrimination. And now, what would the consequences be? I looked at him and saw his gaze settle on me with a slight nod. But for my family, this felt like the end. The dealership atmosphere grew suffocating as everyone awaited his next words. I felt like I was in the eye of a storm, and the storm had only just begun. Clarence Morgan, now that I knew his name and who he was, sat there, calm as a rock in a rushing stream. The black card had been tucked back into his worn jacket pocket, but its weight still hung suspended in the air. The spacious showroom filled with gleaming cars now felt constricted, cramped by the deathly silence. Mike, the manager who had just verified his identity, stepped back behind the counter, his face pale as if he had witnessed an accident. The few remaining customers? The middle-aged couple had quietly slipped out, probably not wanting to get involved in the drama. Whispers began to rise again, but this time filled with confusion and alarm. Is he really Clarence Morgan? The Scott family is done for. There was no longer any way to deny the truth. My father, Wesley, the man who always prided himself on his booming voice and salesman's smile, suddenly changed completely. He hurried toward Clarence, his steps faltering as if he nearly tripped, then bowed his head awkwardly, panic clearly visible. My father stammered, his voice trembling. "Mr. Morgan, we truly had no idea it was you. If we had known this would never have happened, we are truly sorry." He swallowed hard, forcing a crooked smile. "We just thought you were an ordinary visitor. It was a complete misunderstanding." My mother, Nancy, immediately pushed forward, her face ashen beneath thick makeup. She bowed as well, her voice softening almost to a plea. "Mr. Morgan, we are deeply regretful. This was truly a huge misunderstanding," she said quickly, as if afraid that slowing down would let the opportunity slip away. "Our family always respects everyone. That's the truth. Perhaps today was too stressful and things were pushed further than necessary." She clutched her ledger tightly, then hurriedly continued, "If you don't mind, please have a seat again. We can offer you coffee or go over the entire investment plan you're interested in. We're ready to adjust everything to your wishes." Declan also stepped forward, but unlike my parents, his earlier arrogance had vanished completely, replaced by obvious desperation. He forced a smile, his voice high and rushed as he tried to cram excuses into the air. "Mr. Morgan, actually, this was just security protocol," he said quickly. "We were only following regulations to protect the dealership from unwanted elements." He glanced quickly around the showroom, then continued in a lower voice, as if afraid someone might overhear. "You know how Portland is, full of vagrants. We were just trying to maintain the store's image. We truly meant no offense. There was absolutely no ill intent." Clarence remained still, listening without interrupting. Only when Declan finished did he slowly raise his head, his gaze calm but icy. "You don't need to explain," he said, his voice even and low. "What just happened is clear enough for me to understand on my own." All three fell silent at once. My father nodded frantically, clinging to every word. "You're right. Please give us a chance to make it right. Just one chance." Clarence did not answer immediately. He turned to look at me for a moment, an expression carrying no blame, only deep, quiet disappointment. I stood frozen, hands clenched at my sides, saying nothing. In that moment, I understood that no matter how deeply they bowed or how many apologies they offered, some impressions could never be erased. Faced with their frantic reactions, Clarence merely shook his head slightly. He showed neither anger nor forgiveness. His face remained serene, his deep eyes unruffled. He slowly stood, straightened his threadbare jacket, and said, "You don't need to apologize to me. I'm not the one who was hurt here." Those words struck the air like a punch, causing my parents and Declan to freeze. Tension surged through me. What would he say next? Would he forgive them? Or was this the end? Clarence made it clear that what they needed now was not excuses, and he had nothing to forgive for what had just occurred. "I didn't come here to cause trouble or to force anyone to apologize," he said, his voice calm but cold. "I came only to see who you really are when no one is watching, and I have seen." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the showroom, causing everyone to lower their heads. Sarah secretly wiped sweat from her forehead. Mike pretended to be busy at his computer. I stood silently, my mind spinning with memories of the times my parents favored Declan, giving him the big contracts while I handled the menial tasks. Clarence emphasized that his purpose in appearing today was simply to observe and clarify certain things before making any investment decision. "I've heard about Scott dealership," he said, his voice low and steady. "Good sales, prime location in Portland. But investment isn't just about money. It's about people. And today, I've seen enough." Those words were like a time bomb, spreading panic. Hearing that, my parents and Declan grew even more frantic, their eyes repeatedly turning to me as if I were their last lifeline. My father whispered, "Ben, say something. You were the one talking to him. Help us." My mother grasped my hand. "Ben, my son, beg him to forgive us." Declan glared at me. "Do something, don't just stand there like a statue." But I remained still, my mind blank. I was no longer calm enough, nor did I have any reason to step in and rescue anyone. Why should I? They were the ones who had tried to chase him away, who had humiliated him right in front of me, and now they turned to me for help. My heart pounded, the initial suspense quickly turning into a smoldering, heavy anger in my chest. Clarence stated firmly that he would never invest in a place that disregarded human dignity, no matter how profitable or reputable it might be. "I don't do business with people who look down on others," he said, his voice resolute. "No matter how high your sales are, no matter how golden the Portland market is, human dignity matters more. My decision is made." Those words were like a death sentence. My father staggered, gripping the table for support. My mother began sobbing. "Please, Mr. Morgan, give us a chance." Declan stammered, "We can change. Give us time." The atmosphere in the dealership became suffocatingly heavy. Half-finished apologies and pleading looks hung awkwardly in the air like shattered fragments scattered in the wind. The staff began whispering more loudly. Some looked at me with sympathy, others avoided eye contact. I felt the air thicken, making it hard to breathe. The tension reached its peak. Would he change his mind? Or was this truly the end? Clarence slowly turned to leave. Before walking out, his gaze settled on me. There was no reproach, no judgment, just a very slight nod, like a silent acknowledgement. He leaned in slightly and said softly, only loud enough for me to hear, "Young man, stay strong." Those words made me freeze, a chill running down my spine. I wasn't sure why, only that in that moment a vague premonition had already begun to stir within me. Clarence stood and left the dealership, his steps slow but steady, just as they had been when he entered. The glass door chimed once and he disappeared into Portland's light drizzle. Behind him remained the quiet collapse of the Scott family, all their pride laid bare. My father slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "It's over. Our chance is gone." My mother cried harder, hugging Declan. "What do we do now? We've waited years for this." Declan glared at me with resentment. "You could have saved our dealership. Why were you silent?" I stood there motionless, carrying a sense of emptiness mixed with a vague feeling that the moment we had just experienced had unwittingly opened an irreversible turning point in my life. My heart was still racing, but now not from fear, from something new. Freedom? Or just an illusion? The dealership gradually returned to its rhythm, but the atmosphere remained heavy. Sarah approached. "Boss Ben, are you okay?" I nodded, but in my mind, Clarence's words echoed, "Stay strong, young man." I knew the real storm had only just begun. The days that followed passed like a hazy dream, filled with heavy silences and fragmented conversations. The dealership still opened its doors, the cars still gleamed under the lights, but everything had changed. The staff whispered behind my back. Some looked at me with quiet admiration, as if I were the reluctant hero in that day's drama. "Ben, you saved the dealership's dignity," Mike whispered when we ran into each other in the break room. I just gave a faint smile, unsure how to respond. And my family? My parents and Declan avoided me like a ticking time bomb. My father, Wesley, spent most of his time locked in his office, his face perpetually scowling as he tried to figure out how to salvage the shattered investment. My mother, Nancy, tried to act normal, but her eyes were red-rimmed whenever she looked at me, a mix of reproach and regret. Declan no longer bothered to hide it. In brief meetings, he openly glared at me, leaning in close to hiss bitter words. "You think you're so clever, don't you? This whole mess is your fault." I didn't respond, but each remark cut into me like a thin blade. What had I done wrong? I had simply treated an old man with kindness. That was all. Yet somehow I had become the one shouldering all the blame. Portland those days was drenched in endless rain, as if the sky itself were weeping for the turmoil inside me. Every evening I drove home along familiar streets slick with water, golden leaves drifting down under the pale yellow streetlights. My home, a small apartment on the outskirts with a simple kitchen and a worn-out sofa, became a temporary refuge. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, my mind swirling with memories. I kept replaying Clarence's gaze as he left, that gentle nod. It haunted me, making me wonder, what did he see in me? A family traitor? Or a man with principles? Sleep came late, filled with chaotic dreams of the dealership collapsing, Declan sneering, my parents turning their backs. I woke up exhausted but still forced myself to put on a normal face when I went to work. Life had to go on, didn't it? A few days after the incident, exactly 3 days later, while I was sitting at my desk reorganizing customer files to escape the stifling atmosphere, my phone rang. An unknown number not saved in my contacts. My heart tightened slightly. A new customer? Or a sales call? I hesitated for a few seconds, my finger hovering over the screen. Cautiously, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello, Benjamin Scott speaking." There was a second of silence on the other end, then a familiar voice came through, deep, warm, and calm. "Hello, Benjamin, this is Clarence Morgan." I froze, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Surprise flooded through me. I couldn't understand why he would contact me directly. We had only met once, and that meeting had ended with my family's downfall. "Mr. Morgan, is it really you?" I stammered, my mind reeling. What did he want? Revenge? Or just a reminder? Clarence said briefly that he needed to meet me privately, his tone calm and carrying no pressure. "I'd like to talk to you, Benjamin. Nothing to do with the dealership or the investment. Just a regular conversation. Are you free this afternoon?" His words were gentle, like an invitation for coffee from an old friend, but I sensed the weight behind them. My heart pounded, tension rising. Why did he want to meet me alone? I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing through possibilities. Was he going to criticize me? Offer something? What would my family think if they knew? But in the end, curiosity won. "Yes, I can make time. Where should we meet?" He gave the address of a small cafe in downtown Portland, his voice still composed. 3 o'clock. I'll be waiting." I hung up and sat motionless for several minutes. My hands trembled, beads of sweat forming on my forehead despite the cool air in the dealership. I glanced at the clock. 2 hours left. I needed to leave early. I walked to my father's office and knocked lightly. "Personal matter." He looked up, his eyes indifferent. "Go ahead. The dealership doesn't really need you anyway." The words stung, but I ignored them and drove away. The road to the cafe seemed endless, rain pattering on the windshield. I turned on the radio but couldn't focus on anything. My head was full of questions. What did he want? Was this a trap? Tension made me grip the steering wheel tightly, my heart beating like a drum. The meeting place was a small, unpretentious cafe on the corner brew with an old wooden sign and the rich aroma of roasted coffee wafting from the door. Not a fancy place, but cozy, with rustic wooden tables and a few scattered customers reading books. When I stepped inside, the blend of coffee and rain from outside calmed me slightly. I scanned the room and quickly spotted Clarence already seated. He was calm, almost blending into the surroundings, drawing no attention. He wore a cleaner jacket than the one from before, still simple and understated. Holding a cup of black coffee, his gaze quietly directed at the window. He no longer looked homeless, but there was no ostentation either, just a natural humility that was hard to describe. The conversation began with light topics about health and work, without mentioning the dealership or the investment. He asked about Portland's weather, about my weekend hobbies, driving along the coast or reading books. We talked about trivial things, the best coffee in the city, the endless rain. He shared stories of distant travels, the Oregon coast, peaceful mornings. The atmosphere was relaxed, but I remained tense, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My heart beat faster each time he paused, expecting him to finally bring up the incident. After a brief silence, both of us sipping coffee and watching the rain outside the window, Clarence looked directly at me with a serious expression. His deep gaze sent a chill through me. "Benjamin, I asked you here for a reason. I want to offer you a job at my company." The words hit like thunder. I couldn't hide my shock, my mouth falling open. What did you just say? Work for you? Clarence explained that he had noticed me from the moment at the dealership. Not for what I said, but for how I acted. He valued my sales skills, my composure, and most importantly, the professional ethics I had shown that day. You treated me like an ordinary customer, he said slowly. No distinction between rich and poor, no suspicion, no contempt. In this industry, that's a rare quality. He paused, then continued with greater certainty. My company needs people like you. He offered me the position of Regional Business Development Director for the Northwest, a role that came with double my current salary, a company car, broad authority, and near total freedom to shape and decide strategy. It wasn't just a new job, it was a real chance to step into a different league. Faced with that offer, I was torn between loyalty to my family and a genuine life-changing opportunity. My heart raced wildly, tension rising until it was hard to breathe. Loyalty to people who had always pushed me to the sidelines? But they were family. My parents had raised me. Declan was my brother, selfish as he was. I feared being seen as a traitor, feared the accusations, "You're abandoning us for money." I feared that our already fragile family ties would shatter completely. After a long moment of reflection, the cafe seeming to shrink until there was only the sound of rain and my heartbeat, I didn't make a decision. I asked for more time to think and prepare. "Can you give me a few days? I need to consider it carefully." Clarence smiled and agreed without pressure. "Of course, Benjamin, I understand. This is a big decision. Call me when you're ready." He shook my hand, warm and firm, and we parted ways. I left the cafe feeling that the path ahead of me had already begun to fork in a new direction. The rain was still falling, but I felt lighter, though the tension lingered. I thought about the future. A new life, or a huge mistake? How would my parents react? Would Declan be jealous? I knew the decision I was about to make would change everything. I drove home through Portland's familiar light drizzle, turning on the radio just to fill the silence in the car. But the music only made my mind more chaotic. The familiar streets blurred past, smeared behind the rain-streaked windshield, and amid the steady patter of rain, I wondered if I had enough courage to step onto this new path. Clarence Morgan, that enigmatic man, had opened a door, but crossing the threshold meant leaving behind everything I had once considered safe. Family, the dealership, daily routines. My heart beat faster as I thought about my parents' reaction. Would they support me, or see me as a traitor? Tension surged, making my hands grip the steering wheel until they ached. Back at my small apartment, I took off my soaked jacket, brewed a hot cup of tea, and collapsed onto the sofa. The soft yellow light cast shadows on the white walls, making the space feel even quieter. In my mind, a familiar list began to form, clear and merciless. Pros: higher salary, better position, real recognition. No longer standing in Declan's shadow, no longer having to work twice as hard just to be noticed. Cons: family. Awkward dinners, late-night calls from my father that were always about work. The rare praise from my mother that I always had to wait for. I sat there, the tea growing cold in my hands, wondering what I was trading my future for, and whether I had the courage to accept that price. Clarence's offer felt like a reminder that I deserved more. But loyalty, the thing my family always preached, made me hesitate. I lay awake all night, tossing and turning, my mind filled with scenarios. If I left, what would happen to the dealership? Could Declan step up, or would they blame me forever? The tension wasn't from fear, but from the creeping sense of freedom that both excited and unnerved me. After a long, sleepless night, I only managed a few hours of fitful rest, waking with dark circles under my eyes and a heavy head. I decided I had to face it. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual, brewed a strong black coffee to wake myself up, and drove to the dealership with a clearer resolve than ever before. Portland's morning air was crisp and chilly, fog shrouding the streets, but inside me a small flame was burning. I couldn't keep it a secret forever. I had to tell my parents, had to see their reaction. If they supported me, that would be wonderful. If not, perhaps that was the sign I needed. Stepping into the dealership, the scent of new cars and coffee filled the air, but today it brought no familiar comfort. The staff greeted me. Sarah smiled. "Boss Ben, you look exhausted. Did you stay up late?" I nodded vaguely and headed straight to my parents' office in the back. My heart pounded, tension rising like before a big match. I knocked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you about something." My father, Wesley, was sitting behind his large desk, eyes glued to the computer screen with sales reports. My mother, Nancy, sat beside him holding the financial ledger. They looked up, slightly surprised. "Ben, what's this about, coming to us so early?" my father asked, his tone a bit irritable. I closed the door, sat down across from them, and took a deep breath. I went straight to their office and told them about the meeting with Clarence and the offer he had made. "I met Mr. Morgan yesterday afternoon. He called me and invited me to meet privately." I began, my voice even but my heart racing. They froze, eyes widening. "Clarence Morgan met you alone?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. I nodded and recounted the details. The small cafe, the light conversation, then the unexpected offer. "He wants me to join his company. Regional Business Development Director. High salary, significant authority." I paused, waiting for their reaction. I openly said that I wanted to give myself a new opportunity and hoped the family could support my choice. "I think this is a good chance. I want to try it, to grow. Can you support me?" The words hung in the air and I felt the tension skyrocket. My heart raced. What would they say? Smile and congratulate me? As soon as they heard it, Wesley immediately objected loudly, claiming I was being impulsive, irresponsible, and putting personal interests above the family. My father slammed the desk, his face flushed red. "What? Are you crazy, Ben? This is impulsive thinking, irresponsible. You're putting your own interests above the family? This dealership is ours. It's in our blood. You can't just walk away for some vague promise from that old man." His voice boomed in the small room, hitting me like a shock. He stood up abruptly from his chair, pointing at me, his face so tense that the wrinkles stood out more than usual. "What were you thinking?" he shouted. "Wasn't it enough that he tested us once? Now he's coming back to lure you away? This is a scheme, Ben, clearly a scheme." The tension inside me quickly turned to anger, but I held it back, taking a deep breath. My father didn't give me a chance to speak. "The dealership is at its most vulnerable right now. After that incident, we lost the investment opportunity and sales are starting to drop. You're the backbone of sales here. If you leave, who will handle the customers? Who will carry the revenue?" He shook his head repeatedly. All for some vague promise from an outsider? "Do you think he's sincere?" I looked at him and noticed his hands trembling slightly. Not from anger, but from fear. I wasn't sure if he was afraid of losing me or losing the numbers I brought in each month. My mother, Nancy, stepped forward, her voice softening as if to calm the room. She spoke, forcing a gentle smile. "I understand you want to challenge yourself. You're the best salesperson in this dealership. So many big clients, so many stable contracts. All thanks to you." She placed her hand on mine. "I'm truly proud of you." For a moment, I almost believed her. But then she continued, slower and heavier. "But if you leave, have you thought about what will happen to the dealership? Without you, everything will be severely affected. The family's image, the profits, years of hard work, all damaged." She looked at me for a long time. "Think about Declan. Think about your parents. We're a family." My heart sank. They said a lot, but no one asked what I wanted or what future I envisioned. No, "What do you want, Ben?" or "What are your dreams?" Just the dealership, sales, and profits. Then my mother spoke again, her voice deliberately softening as if she had found a compromise. "How about this, Ben?" she said, her eyes calculating. "If he really needs someone, why not let Declan try? Your brother has management experience and knows the dealership inside out. You can stay with the family. That way the opportunity isn't wasted and we don't have to disrupt everything." My father immediately agreed, as if he had been waiting for those words. He nodded vigorously, his voice firmer. "Exactly, Declan is the eldest. He's in charge of management. It makes the most sense for him to meet the man. You stay here and keep doing what you're doing. The dealership still needs you." Those words left me stunned. I looked at my mother, then my father, and realized that to them replacing me with Declan was a decision they could make in seconds. Casually, cruelly. My throat dry, I managed to speak, but he didn't make a general offer. He specifically named me. The room fell silent for a moment. I remembered Clarence's gaze that day clearly, every word he said. Not an offer that could be swapped, not an opportunity anyone could step into. He had looked straight at me, called my name. My father waved it off, his voice impatient. "That can be explained away. The important thing is the dealership can't afford to lose anyone right now." My mother added softly but firmly, "Our family doesn't need to split over an outside opportunity, Ben." I stood there, speechless. In that instant, I understood that whether he chose me or not had never been the issue. In their eyes, the only thing that mattered was preserving the familiar order, and I, even when chosen, was always the one who could be pushed aside if necessary. I tried to speak one last time, my voice already trembling. "This isn't just a job. It's a chance for me to grow, to be recognized for my abilities. I'm tired of always being in the background, always seen as the backup plan." But my father cut me off immediately. "Grow? Recognition?" he growled. "You have all that here. What more do you want?" My mother chimed in, her tone both soothing and dismissive. "Don't think that way, Ben. The family has always recognized you." They kept pressing me, repeating words about family duty, the efforts in raising me, and responsibility to the dealership, like invisible ropes tightening around me. "Family comes first, Ben," my father growled. "We raised you, taught you everything. This dealership is our legacy." My mother couldn't hold back, her voice choking with tears. "Don't abandon us, I beg you." I couldn't take it anymore. I knew if I continued, this conversation would only turn into an endless battle. I bowed my head, nodded slightly. "Fine, I'll stay," I said slowly, eyes fixed on the floor to avoid their gazes. "If that's how everyone feels, if the dealership and family matter that much, then I'll keep working here." My voice was so soft I could barely hear it myself. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't true agreement, just the temporary silence of someone who had just realized that in this family he was always the one who could be replaced. I left the office feeling heavy, knowing that my silence wasn't genuine consent but only a brief retreat before the big wave ahead. Stepping back into the showroom, I felt burdened. The tension remained, but now it was resolve. I knew the big wave was coming. The dealership carried on, but inside me everything had changed. My footsteps on the polished granite floor sounded heavier than usual, as if each one carried the weight of unspoken words. My parents had laid bare their selfishness, not concern for me, but for the dealership, for their profits. I returned to my desk, slumped into the chair, and stared at the computer screen without really seeing anything. Customer files were scattered around, but my mind wandered. Memories flooded in like a tide. The early mornings I got up to prepare documents, the late-night calls to negotiate contracts, the weary smiles when I brought in big sales. And now, it was all just a pillar for them, nothing more. Tension surged. Did I dare take the step? Or would I remain stuck here forever, swallowing injustices? I went back to the daily routine, completing every task as before, but my mind was constantly pulled taut between anticipation and disappointment. In the days that followed, I tried to keep a normal expression, organizing files, calling customers, showing them cars, all done mechanically. But every time I saw Declan glide past with a smug look, or my parents whispering in their office, a hidden wave rose inside me. "Ben, do you have the appointment with Mr. Johnson today?" Mike asked from the tech corner. I nodded automatically, but in my head I was thinking about Clarence's offer. He was still waiting and I hadn't called. I was afraid to face the consequences, afraid of losing what little remained of my family. Portland those days had rare sunshine, but for me everything remained gloomy. Evenings at home, I cooked alone, ate without tasting, then lay awake. Disappointment spread. What was I waiting for? An apology from my parents, or just the moment to free myself? The tension kept me alert, like a ticking time bomb. At the end of the month, during the business performance review meeting, a high-end electric vehicle distribution contract worth tens of millions of dollars, one that I had personally negotiated and secured, was presented in the summary. The meeting took place in the large conference room with its long mahogany table and projection screen. All key managers and staff were present, about 20 people, from Sarah to Mike, sitting quietly in anticipation. My father chaired it, his voice booming. "This month's sales are stable thanks to the big contracts." My mother nodded, holding the remote for the slides. And then the slide appeared for the electric vehicle contract, the one I had spent weeks negotiating, making late-night calls, persuading suppliers to lower prices. My heart beat faster, tension rising. This was the moment they would acknowledge me. In front of the entire management team and key staff, my parents publicly gave all the credit to Declan, claiming he had provided the strategic direction. My father laughed loudly. And the biggest contract of the month, the premium electric vehicle distribution deal worth $20 million. The credit goes to Declan for his outstanding strategic direction. My mother chimed in. "That's right, Declan has brought us so many potential clients." Declan sat there, smiling complacently, nodding thanks as everyone applauded. I froze in place, feeling as if all my efforts had just been erased in a single sentence. My heart stopped for a second, then raced wildly. The tension turned to pain. How could they? I was the one who negotiated, who signed the papers, who lost sleep over it. Everyone clapped, but I caught Sarah's pitying glance toward me. Mike whispered something to the person next to him. I sat silently, hands clenched under the table, feeling as if I had been slapped hard. Months of effort, the calls, the emails, the trips, wiped out just because of strategic direction? Declan hadn't even been involved. Disappointment surged, tears threatening, but I swallowed them down. The meeting continued, but for me, everything blurred. The tension peaked. Would I stay silent forever? After the meeting, I sought out my parents to confront them, trying to stay calm but unable to hide the hurt. I waited until everyone left, then stepped into their office, the door ajar. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk." My voice trembled. They looked up, slightly surprised. "About the electric vehicle contract." "Why did you give the credit to Declan? I did everything." I tried to stay composed, but my voice broke, the pain obvious. My parents immediately defended Declan, saying it was a minor issue, that whose name was attached didn't matter as long as the dealership profited, and advised me not to be petty. My father shook his head. "Ben, it's a small thing. Does it matter whose name is on it? What matters is the dealership's profit." My mother agreed. "Exactly. Don't be so calculating. Declan is your older brother. He provides the direction. We're a family, we share." The exchange quickly turned into a heated argument, as for the first time I voiced my years of feeling undervalued, while my parents kept interrupting, accusing me of being selfish and not thinking about the family. I couldn't hold back anymore. "It's not a small thing. I've been undervalued for years. Every contract I bring in, the credit goes to Declan. I'm tired of it." My voice rose, tension surging into anger. My father cut in. "You're selfish. You don't think about the family." My mother cried, "Don't be like this, Ben. We've always been fair." The argument dragged on, shouts echoing, drawing glances from staff in the showroom. I poured it all out, the years of being sidelined, the unrecognized efforts. But they didn't listen, only labeling me selfish. I stormed out, slamming the door, my heart pounding. In the weeks that followed, I was gradually excluded from important meetings. Major decisions were made without my involvement. I received fewer appointments, was left out of strategy sessions. Declan took the lead with my parents' support. A new vehicle purchase decision was made without my knowledge. The tension shifted to clear realization. I saw that all along, no matter how great my contributions or how much profit I brought in, I had never been truly valued. All of it was just to bolster Declan's position and power. It became clear. I was merely a tool, not a son. In that moment, I understood my true role in the family, not the heir, not a partner, but an effective instrument when needed. My heart ached, but resolve grew stronger. No longer hesitating, I called Clarence. For the first time, I expressed my desire to leave and accept the offer he had made earlier. That evening, I sat alone, phone in hand, fingers trembling slightly as I dialed the familiar number. "Mr. Morgan, it's Benjamin," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've thought about it carefully, and I accept your offer." There was a brief silence on the line. Then his voice came through, deep and warm. "I've been waiting a long time for this call from you. It's the right decision." I set the phone down, my heart pounding in my chest. The tension surged, but this time it wasn't fear. I knew I had just crossed a threshold from which life would never return to the way it was. A few days later, I went to Clarence's company headquarters and signed the official contract, with terms for the position, authority, and compensation I had never dared dream of. The headquarters was in downtown Portland, a modern glass building. Clarence greeted me. The contract lay on the table. Sky-high salary, company car provided, decision-making freedom. I signed, my hand trembling slightly, but my heart felt light. When my parents found out, they came to me in unmasked fury. Accusations and insults poured down, betraying the family in gratitude, turning my back on blood for personal ambition. My father disowned me on the spot while my mother cried, but tears mixed more with resentment than regret. Declan stood beside them, saying little, but his eyes revealed clear satisfaction, as if my departure had removed a quiet threat that had long made him uneasy. Faced with all those reactions, I silently realized that my decision wasn't betrayal. It was the first time I had chosen my own path. I watched them leave, my heart at peace. The tension was now freedom. My life was beginning. The first days at Clarence Morgan's company felt like stepping into an entirely different world. The headquarters was in downtown Portland, a modern glass building with spacious offices flooded with natural light from large windows overlooking the Willamette River. Gone was the scent of new cars. In its place was the aroma of freshly roasted coffee and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. I officially started in the role of Regional Business Development Director for the Northwest, a title that sounded impressive, but I knew I had to prove myself. Clarence greeted me in the lobby with a firm handshake. "Welcome, Benjamin. Your office is on the 3rd floor. You start today." He didn't say much more, just smiled and gave me space. My heart beat faster than usual, a mix of nerves and excitement. This was a real opportunity, not the empty promises I'd gotten from my family. I wore a sharp suit, carried a briefcase, and took the elevator upstairs. Colleagues greeted me warmly. A young woman named Lisa from marketing, a tech guy named Tom with a wide grin. "You're Ben, right? Mr. Morgan told us about you." "Welcome," Lisa said, handing me a cup of coffee. I nodded, trying to hide my nerves. I had never worked in a place this big where everything was professional, not the messy family-style chaos. From the very first days, I threw myself into the work with ambition and discipline, unafraid to start over from the smallest details. I didn't act like a big boss. I sat down and learned from scratch. I arrived at the office early before everyone else and organized my desk, a small corner with a computer, notebook, and a view of the city. I read through all the ongoing project files and called old partners to introduce myself. "Hello, this is Benjamin Scott, the new director. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the current process." My voice was steady, but inside tension surged. Would they accept me? One afternoon, I sat with the sales team, taking detailed notes on how they approached clients. I didn't mind the small tasks, printing reports, brewing coffee for meetings, even teaching myself the new management software late into the night. In my apartment those evenings, I sat in front of the computer with burning eyes, but a sense of fulfillment spread through me. Compared to the old dealership, where everything was familiar yet suffocating, here I could finally breathe. The tension remained. I feared failure, feared disappointing Clarence, but it drove me forward. I quickly proved my abilities with clear progress, expanding the client network, improving sales processes, and securing major contracts in a short time. Just 2 weeks in, I contacted a chain of dealerships in Seattle, expanding the network by organizing an online seminar on electric vehicles. "We need to focus on sustainability," I presented confidently. The result? A distribution contract for 500 hybrid vehicles worth $15 million. The following week, I streamlined the sales process by integrating new CRM software, reducing order processing time from 3 days to 1. The staff started noticing. Lisa said, "Ben, you're making everything so much faster." Then came the big contract with a major automaker in California. I negotiated through the night, convincing them to choose us over competitors. "We're committed to quality and long-term support," I said over the phone, my heart pounding. They agreed, bringing in $25 million. The board called a meeting, and Clarence nodded. "Well done, Benjamin." My efforts earned straightforward recognition from the executive team and genuine respect from the staff below me. I smiled, but inside, tension lingered. Was this success sustainable, or just luck? Meanwhile, news from the family dealership occasionally reached me naturally through short calls from former colleagues. At first I avoided them, but they still called. Sarah, Mike, the people I had worked with. One evening the phone rang. It was Sarah. "Ben, it's Sarah. How have you been?" Her voice sounded tired. I hesitated but answered, "I'm doing okay. How about you?" She spoke softly. "The family dealership isn't doing well these days. Monthly sales are steadily dropping. This month it's down 20% from before." I listened in silence. She said internal meetings had grown increasingly tense, with Wesley often losing control and lashing out at staff. "Mr. Wesley yells all the time. Today he fired a technician over a small mistake." Declan was struggling to handle the crisis but achieving little. His inexperienced and hasty decisions only worsened the chaos. Declan suddenly cut costs, but customers are complaining. One wrong decision and now the inventory is piling up. The poor management eroded staff confidence. Talented employees began leaving one by one, and loyal customers started drifting away. "I'm thinking about quitting. One of your old clients, Mr. Johnson, switched to another dealership." The deep sales decline brought mounting financial pressure, turning old loans into a constant worry for the Scott family, even as the dealership tried to maintain a normal appearance on the surface. In those conversations, they all mentioned me, saying that since I left, the dealership had lost its most important pillar. "Ever since you left, the place has lost its soul. You were the backbone, Ben. Everyone misses you." Those words made me pause, tension rising. Did I have responsibility? But I only listened quietly without interrupting or offering advice, because now I wanted to focus entirely on the path I had chosen. "Hang in there," I said briefly, then hung up. I didn't want to get involved, didn't want to go back. My new life was going well, efficient meetings, respectful colleagues, real success. But each call was a reminder, making my heart beat faster. Tension about the old dealership's fate. Would it collapse? Or was it just temporary? I pushed the thought away and focused on the new report. One day, Clarence came to my office on his own initiative, openly praising the results I had achieved in such a short time. That morning, I was checking emails when the door opened and Clarence walked in holding a cup of coffee. "Benjamin, are you busy? I'd like to talk." My heart tightened, tension surging. Was he here to check on me? Or fire me? But he just sat across from me and smiled. "You're doing very well. The California contract, outstanding. The speed at which you've expanded the network is even faster than I expected. The board is impressed." Those words warmed me, a feeling completely different from the half-hearted praise I'd once heard from my father. I took a deep breath. "Thank you for trusting me and giving me this opportunity," I said, my voice slightly trembling but sincere. "I'm still adjusting to the new role, but I'll do my absolute best not to let you down." We continued discussing upcoming projects. He offered a few strategic suggestions, and I listened carefully, taking notes. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just given responsibility. I was truly listened to and valued. Then he lowered his voice as if shifting to a more important topic. "There's one more thing I want to mention," he said slowly. "I'm quietly preparing a plan to acquire your family's car dealership through intermediaries, not directly." I froze. He spoke calmly, but each word landed heavily, making it clear this wasn't a passing idea but a carefully calculated decision. I was stunned by the revelation, my mouth falling open. Acquire my family's dealership? Tension reached its peak. What was this? Revenge? Clarence shook his head. "It's not about grudges. I see wasted potential there. The current operation has serious flaws, weak management, losing customers. I want to save it and make it part of a larger system." He explained in detail. Intermediary teams were negotiating based on financial data. Clarence was doing this not out of spite, but because he saw wasted potential and grave operational mistakes. "That dealership has a good location in Portland, but it's slowly dying. I don't want to see that happen." I was stunned by the news, but didn't question or object. I understood that the wheels of fate had begun turning on their own path beyond my personal wishes. I sat silently, my mind reeling. Tension surged. What would happen to the old dealership if it belonged to Clarence? What about my family? He left, leaving me with a strange feeling. I looked out the window at bustling Portland under rare sunshine. Fate. It rolls forward and I couldn't stop it. The tension remained, but now it was acceptance. My life had taken a new direction, and so had the old dealership. In the weeks that followed, work at Clarence Morgan's company swept me into a new rhythm, full of energy and challenges. I woke up earlier, went for runs along the Willamette River to clear my head, then dove into the office with fresh projects. The contracts with the Seattle dealerships were progressing well, and I began expanding into Vancouver. International calls, detailed emails about distribution strategies. My colleagues respected me not because of my title, but because of the results. Lisa often stopped by my office. "Ben, the online seminar idea was great. Should we do another one on autonomous vehicles?" I nodded and smiled, but inside there were still quiet moments. The calls from the old dealership grew rarer, but each one stirred memories. Sarah talking about falling sales, Mike whispering about the tense atmosphere. "Ben, Mr. Wesley is losing his temper all the time. Declan is all over the place." I listened but didn't comment. I no longer wanted to get involved. This new life, with quick lunches at riverside eateries, efficient meetings free of family arguments, made me feel free, yet also lonely. The tension lingered. Would the acquisition actually happen? How would my family react? I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the revenue spreadsheet on my screen. Portland had rare sunny days, but inside me clouds still hovered. One morning, as I was checking emails, the internal phone rang. "Benjamin, come to my office, please," Clarence's calm voice said through the speaker. My heart tightened slightly, tension rose. What did he want? Praise? Or a problem? I straightened my tie, took the elevator to the top floor where Clarence's spacious office offered a panoramic view of the city. He sat behind a large wooden desk, holding a stack of documents, and smiled as I entered. I sat down, hands lightly clenched under the table, waiting. Clarence slid the papers toward me. "These are the official documents. The company has completed the takeover of your family's car dealership through financial obligations." I picked them up, scanning, signatures, seals, figures showing the debts cleared. The dealership now belonged to Morgan Investments. Tension turned to stunned silence. "So the transaction is fully complete?" I asked, my voice faltering slightly. Clarence nodded. "Yes. They were buried in debt. We offered to acquire it in exchange for wiping the slate clean and restructuring, and they accepted without hesitation." I swallowed hard, memories flooding back. The tense meetings at the old dealership, my father shouting, my mother worrying over the books. Now it all belonged to us. But there was more. Clarence continued, "And I'm appointing you as the new operator of that dealership." The words hit like lightning. I was both surprised and deeply moved by that trust. I understood that this time Clarence wasn't just giving me a title, he was handing me real decision-making power. My heart pounded, tears threatening, not from sadness but from emotion. "You trust me that much?" I asked, my voice trembling. Clarence smiled. "You've already proven yourself, Benjamin. Here, you've brought in major contracts and led well. That dealership needs you to save it, not for revenge." He patted my shoulder. "Full authority, personnel, strategy, finances, do well." I nodded, holding the documents, feeling as if I were grasping the key to a new chapter. Tension surged. Returning to the old dealership in a new role? Facing my parents, Declan? What would it be like? Clarence announced there would be an official meeting at the dealership to reveal the new ownership and management structure. "This afternoon at 2 o'clock, I'll go with you." I left his office, my mind spinning. Fate was moving faster than I had imagined. That afternoon, I drove to the old dealership, the familiar route through Portland streets, but everything felt completely different now. No longer an employee, but the new owner. Clarence sat beside me, his voice calm. "Are you ready?" I nodded, but my hands gripped the steering wheel. Tension reached its peak. How would they react? The dealership appeared, still bearing the Scott Auto sign, but now it was different. We parked and walked into the glass showroom. The familiar atmosphere, the scent of new cars, the murmur of staff conversations. Sarah saw me and her eyes widened. "Ben, why are you back?" I smiled. "You'll find out soon." I was returning in a new role, not to argue or prove anything, but to fulfill the responsibility entrusted to me. I wasn't there to gloat. I was there to work. When they saw me, my parents looked surprised, then quickly spat sarcastic remarks claiming I no longer had any connection to the place. My father rushed out of his office, face flushed. "Ben, what are you doing here? You already left." My mother followed, her voice shrill. "Son, you have no business here anymore. Please leave. Don't make things worse." Declan chimed in with a sneer. "Oh, the traitor's back to watch us suffer? Or to apologize?" Their eyes were full of contempt, but I could see the exhaustion. The showroom quieter, more inventory sitting unsold. Tension rose, but I stayed calm. I didn't retaliate, simply stating calmly that I was there for the meeting to announce the new ownership structure and to carry out my duties. "I'm here for the meeting. To announce the new owner and management structure," I said evenly, gesturing toward the conference room. Clarence stood beside me, silently observing. They froze. "New owner? What are you talking about?" Declan shouted. We entered the conference room. Staff gathered, the atmosphere tense. Clarence spoke first. "Thank you all for being here. Today, on behalf of Morgan Investments, I announce we have acquired this dealership through a financial agreement." Whispers erupted. The room's atmosphere shifted completely as the news was confirmed. The dealership had been acquired by Clarence's company, and I was granted full decision-making authority. Clarence continued, "And Benjamin Scott will be the new managing director with complete authority." My parents and Declan stood frozen, panic clear as they realized control had slipped from their hands long ago. My father staggered. "Impossible. We only signed a debt relief agreement, not a sale." My mother cried, "Clarence, you tricked us." Declan turned pale. "You're the new director? Is this a joke?" They realized the debt relief deal was in fact an acquisition. Tension turned dramatic. The room fell dead silent, staff exchanging glances. A fierce argument broke out. My parents, furious and desperate, kept questioning, blaming, and trying to cling to lost power. My father shouted, "Clarence, you have no right. This dealership is ours." My mother interjected, "Ben, how could you do this to your family? Betrayal." Declan lunged forward first, his voice roaring with rage. "You stole it from me. I'm the heir." My parents joined in immediately, accusations and questions overlapping. They turned to Clarence, bombarding him with questions about the contract and clauses, desperately trying to hold on. "We can buy it back. Please don't give the dealership to Ben." The conference room quickly descended into chaos. Shouting and arguing echoed through the enclosed space, overlapping, laying bare the panic and helplessness of those who had just realized power had slipped away. Amid all that turmoil, I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't sneer or respond emotionally. I chose to face everything with reason. I stood up, my voice steadier than I expected. "Everyone, please calm down. This is the reality, and what the dealership needs now is stability." I didn't gloat or reproach anyone, even though it hurt inside. The tension was still there, but this time I controlled it instead of letting it control me. I announced specific decisions to stabilize operations, including retaining key staff and offering my parents and brother subordinate management roles if they wish to stay. "I'll keep the core staff, Sarah, Mike, everyone. As for Mom, Dad, and Declan, if you want to stay, you can take subordinate management roles in sales, support, or finance." Those words landed like a bomb. For my parents, taking orders from the son they had once undervalued was unacceptable. They saw it as humiliation and refused. My father shouted, "Take orders from you? That's an insult to me." My mother cried, "Son, how can you be so heartless?" Declan refused even more vehemently to lose power, feeling sidelined and unworthy of a lower position. "I'm the boss, not your employee." Faced with the choice to adapt or leave, all three chose to pack their things and walk out in anger and hurt. They rushed into their offices, gathering papers and personal items, faces flushed with fury. "We'd rather leave than work under you," my father shouted, then slammed the door behind him. The remaining staff watched in silence, no one saying a word. In that silence, everyone understood this departure wasn't forced. It was because they couldn't accept the new reality. The other staff witnessed the entire scene quietly, then gradually showed support as they realized I was the only one offering stability and a fresh start. Sarah approached. "Ben, I support you. The dealership needs you." Mike nodded. "We're staying." The tension eased, replaced by hope. I stayed behind, beginning to restructure the dealership with the remaining team, focusing on rescuing operations and restoring customer trust. I called a quick meeting. "We'll improve processes and reach out to old customers." Everyone nodded and got to work. Amid that chaotic scene, I realized true power doesn't lie in winning or losing within a family, but in holding firm to principles and moving things forward, even if it means walking on without them beside you. I stood alone in the showroom, looking at the gleaming cars, my heart at peace. The tension was over. This was a new beginning. After taking over the dealership, I gradually guided it through its worst phase. The first days were truly difficult, with sales still sluggish and a tense atmosphere permeating everywhere. The staff whispered about the sudden changes, while old customers hesitated to return due to rumors about the ownership transfer. I devoted most of my time to systematically restructuring everything. Every morning I arrived at the dealership earlier than everyone else, sitting in my father's old office, now mine, and drawing up detailed plans for each department. I held short meetings with the team, listening to their input and implementing small but effective changes, such as improving the inventory checking process to reduce customer wait times. Gradually, the dealership's operations began to stabilize. Sales recovered step by step, starting with small contracts from local companies, then expanding to larger clients through marketing campaigns I designed myself. The staff also began to regain their old rhythm, with smiles appearing more frequently in the break room and conversations growing livelier during work hours. Sarah, the friendly receptionist, once said to me, "Ben, things are getting better. We feel more hopeful since you came back." Those words warmed my heart, but I knew the journey was still long, and I had to stay focused to avoid being pulled back by the past. Portland entered its harsh winter those months with persistent rain and bone-chilling winds. I often worked late, driving home in the dark, my mind still occupied with revenue figures and plans for the next day. My life had become more stable with simple home-cooked dinners and relaxing evenings with business books. I no longer received messages or calls from my parents or Declan. They had completely disowned me after that fateful meeting. I told myself I was no longer tied to them, that I had chosen my own path and had to stand firm. But life sometimes brings surprises no one can foresee. One such evening on my way home from work, as I stopped at a red light in a busy downtown intersection, I caught a glimpse of two homeless people huddled on the sidewalk. Their figures felt strangely familiar, making me pause and my heart beat faster. The pale yellow streetlights illuminated their tattered, worn clothes and weary, downcast faces. I wondered if I was imagining it, but the premonition was too strong to ignore. I decided to pull over and approach to confirm, walking slowly on the wet sidewalk, the cold wind stinging my face and sending shivers down my spine. As I got closer, I was stunned to realize it was indeed my parents. They had become so gaunt and haggard they were almost unrecognizable, bearing no trace of the people who once lived in comfort with lavish parties and leisurely trips. My father, the once tall and authoritative man, now sat hunched over, his skin wrinkled, his gray beard unkempt, his sunken eyes revealing exhaustion and despair. My mother, with her disheveled hair and patched-up coat, looked like a ghost of her former self. They sat leaning against each other, wrapped tightly in thin blankets to fend off the cold, surrounded by a few plastic bags holding their meager belongings. My heart tightened, tension surging like a violent wave. How had they fallen into this state? I had imagined many scenarios for their life after leaving the dealership, but never this tragic one. Even though I had told myself I was no longer bound to them, that the past wounds had forced me to cut all ties, seeing this scene made it impossible to walk away. A powerful mix of pity and conflict rose within me, choking my throat and stinging my eyes. Part of me wanted to turn away, remembering the harsh criticisms, the times I was undervalued and betrayed. But the other part, the son in me, couldn't bear seeing my parents at rock bottom like this. Tension spread through my body as I wondered if intervening would be a mistake, or if this was a chance to heal the cracks without losing myself. As I drew nearer, my parents suddenly recognized me. They immediately stood up awkwardly, heads bowed in shame, and hurriedly tried to leave as if to escape my gaze. My father staggered to his feet, leaning against the wall, his voice hoarse. "Is that you, Ben?" My mother covered her mouth, eyes red-rimmed, and they began turning away, walking quickly without another word, as if my presence was an unbearable humiliation. I could clearly see the shame in their every gesture. These once proud people who had commanded an entire dealership now wanting to flee from their own son. I called out to them, saying I wanted to talk, and after a moment's hesitation, they agreed to follow me in silence. "Mom, Dad, wait. I want to talk to you." My voice rang out, firm yet gentle, cutting through the heavy silence. They stopped, exchanged conflicted glances, and after a brief pause, nodded without speaking, following me quietly. We walked along the sidewalk, shoes crunching on the wet pavement, the air between us so thick it could be cut. The tension inside me didn't subside, for I didn't know where this conversation would lead, but I knew I couldn't turn away now. I took them to a nearby roadside diner, ordered simple but hearty dishes, and quietly watched as they ate ravenously like people who hadn't had a proper meal in days. The small, cozy diner with its warm yellow lights and inviting food aromas was a place I often stopped after work. I chose a corner table and ordered hot soup, toasted bread, roasted chicken, and fresh salad, simple but nourishing meals. My parents sat down, hands trembling as they held spoons and forks, and began eating greedily, as if this were their first real meal after days of hunger. My father slurped the soup hurriedly. My mother bit into the bread without chewing properly. I sat silently watching, my heart aching with pity. The sight choked me as I realized they had truly hit rock bottom with none of their former pride remaining. These people who had once harshly criticized me, who had disowned me, were now just two frail individuals dependent on others' kindness. Once they calmed down after the meal, I asked what had happened since leaving the dealership. "Mom, Dad, tell me. What happened after you left the dealership?" I asked gently but firmly, trying to keep the atmosphere from becoming too tense. My parents began to speak, their voices trembling and halting, explaining that just a few months earlier Declan had come to them with a quick profit investment project, promising it would turn things around and help them reclaim what they had lost. My father sighed heavily. Declan came to our house talking about a real estate investment on the outskirts. He promised that with our capital, we'd double our money and could buy back the dealership or start something new. My mother continued, eyes red-rimmed and voice shaking. "He's our eldest son. We trusted him. He said this was our last chance to turn everything around, to regain what we lost. Because of you." Those words caused a slow, dull ache in my chest. But I said nothing, just sat silently and listened to the end. They explained that trusting their older brother, they had poured in their remaining savings and even mortgaged their only house to contribute capital. We put in everything we had left, savings from years of work, and borrowed more by mortgaging the house, my father said, his voice full of regret. We thought it was the way to get back on our feet, to avoid living in shame. Not long after, Declan disappeared with all the money, leaving them with enormous debt. The bank quickly foreclosed on the house, forcing them to leave and become truly homeless. My mother sobbed softly. He vanished after just a few weeks without a word. The bank came for the house. We had nowhere to go and ended up on the streets. My father bowed his head. Since then, we've lived like this, begging, sleeping outdoors. We have nothing left. Looking at my parents sitting before me, I went through an intense internal struggle between painful memories and filial duty. My heart raced, tension surging like a storm. The hurtful memories flooded back. The times I was undervalued, the insults when I left, the favoritism toward Declan. I wondered why I should help when they had pushed me aside. But filial duty, the bond of blood, made it impossible to remain indifferent. They were my parents, after all. The tension made my hands cold, my mind spinning with questions. Help them and risk being taken advantage of again? Or was this a chance to heal? In the end, I decided to extend a helping hand, but with a clear resolve that the help would come with strict conditions and boundaries to ensure the old tragedies would never repeat. "I'll help you," I said firmly. "I'll take you to my home temporarily and help you get stable. But there are conditions. No more risky investments, no interfering in my work, and you'll gradually find ways to become self-reliant." They nodded, eyes flickering with a mix of hope and shame. The tension eased, replaced by peace. This was my choice, and I would hold firm to the boundaries to protect myself. I watched my parents sitting across from me in the roadside diner, the empty soup bowls and a few crumbs of bread scattered on the table in front of them. Their faces no longer carried the arrogance or reproach from our previous arguments. Only exhaustion and a silent, unnamed gratitude. My father wiped his mouth with his threadbare sleeve, cleared his throat, and spoke in a hoarse, low voice. "Thank you, son. We'll try. At least we won't disappoint you any further." My mother nodded, her eyes red-rimmed but no longer crying, as if she were trying to preserve the last shred of dignity for herself. I stood up to pay the bill, then led them to the car, opening the back door for them to get in. The drive back to my apartment suddenly felt longer than usual. The patter of rain on the windshield blended with the heavy silence inside the car, so thick it was almost tangible. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw my parents sitting close together, hands clasped tightly as if clinging to something fragile. A wave of tension rose in me. Was this decision the right one? Would they truly respect the boundaries I had set, or would everything fall back into the old cycle of hurt? I exhaled softly, pushing those thoughts aside and focusing on driving slowly through Portland's wet streets, as if letting go of the wheel for even a second would cause everything to slip out of control. I brought my parents to live temporarily in my small home, seeing it as a short-term solution while I considered a longer-term plan. My apartment wasn't spacious, just one bedroom, a living room that doubled as a kitchen, and a small balcony overlooking the street. But it was enough for 3 people. I turned the sofa into a temporary bed, pulled clean blankets and pillows from the closet, and showed them how to use the simple gas stove. "You can sleep here for now. Tomorrow I'll buy whatever else you need," I said, my voice gentle but firm. They nodded without demanding anything, quietly removing their shoes and lying down. I went into my room, closed the door, and lay awake for a long while. The tension lingered like an underground current. This was the first time I had let them into my private world, and I wondered if their presence would disrupt the peace I had built. But I knew it was only temporary. I needed time to think about a permanent solution, perhaps finding them a separate place or helping them find work to become self-sufficient. The first days passed quietly, without conflict or forced interactions, just 3 people coexisting in an unfamiliar space. In the mornings, I got up to brew coffee, leaving 3 cups on the kitchen table, then headed to work without much conversation. My parents woke later, ate breakfast with the bread and fruit I had bought, and spent most of their time sitting in the living room, gazing out the balcony or watching TV at low volume. There were no long conversations, no barrage of questions about my work, no recriminations about the past. The apartment's atmosphere became strangely peaceful, as if we were all learning to live together without touching old wounds. I came home late, often eating dinner alone at the dealership, then returning just to sleep. The initial tension gradually gave way to familiarity, but I remained vigilant, always reminding myself of the boundaries I had set. Wesley became quiet and withdrawn, speaking little, spending much of his time alone or doing simple chores as if to remind himself he was no longer in a position to give orders. My father, the man who once shouted at staff and commanded the family, now sat for hours by the window watching the rain, or voluntarily washed dishes after meals without being asked. He said little, only nodding when I asked about his health, and sometimes made himself a cup of tea, sitting in a corner lost in thought about past mistakes. I observed him from a distance, noticing the change, no longer authoritative, but an aging man learning humility. The tension inside me lingered, wondering if this quietness was genuine or just temporary. Nancy no longer carried her former haughty air. She took the initiative to clean, cook, and always acted cautiously, as if afraid of bothering her son. My mother, who once obsessed over the dealership's image and harshly criticized me, now rose early to sweep the floors, wipe the kitchen counters, and prepare simple meals like vegetable soup or sandwiches. She did everything quietly, always asking my permission before using anything. That cautious attitude softened my heart, but it also reminded me of old wounds. She no longer had the superior demeanor or sarcastic remarks, just a weary woman trying to atone through actions. Each dinner passed in silence, the shame evident in my parents' eyes as they sat across from me. We gathered around the small table, eating what my mother had cooked, but no one spoke much. Their gazes avoided mine, filled with embarrassment for falling into this situation, for what they had done to me. I ate slowly, observing them, tension creeping in. Would they speak up? Or would this silence last forever? I watched it all calmly, occasionally asking brief questions about their health or daily needs without blame or consolation. I didn't want to corner them, so I kept it simple. "How are you feeling today, Mom and Dad? Is the food okay?" They answered briefly, and I didn't probe deeper. I didn't reproach them about the past or offer empty comforts. I believed time would heal, not words. The tension inside me gradually shifted to waiting to see if their change was real. One evening, after a simple meal, the 3 of us sat in the living room. Outside the window, rain continued to fall steadily, each drop prolonging the silence in the room. The TV was on low, playing the familiar news, but no one was really watching. The atmosphere was so heavy I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. We sat like that for a long time until my father cleared his throat. "We want to talk to you," he said, his voice hoarse and lower than usual. I reached for the remote and turned off the TV, sitting up straighter. My heart beat a little faster, a familiar feeling, both tense and wary. Perhaps this was the moment. My father looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed without the usual hardness. "We were blind," he said slowly, as if each word was painfully difficult to utter. "Because of power, pride, and favoritism toward Declan. We thought we were protecting the family, but in the end, we lost everything." He paused, taking a deep breath. "We lost the dealership. We lost our son. And we lost ourselves." My mother clasped her hands tightly, then continued, her voice trembling. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "I was wrong. Wrong for always favoring your brother, for undervaluing you and taking your efforts for granted. I let greed and arrogance blind me, failing to see how much you were hurting." The room fell silent again. There were no excuses, no blaming circumstances or others, just raw acknowledgement without evasion. My father spoke again, his voice deeper. "We're not asking for your forgiveness. We know some things can't be undone. We just wanted to say it all to lighten our hearts and to let you know we accept responsibility for our mistakes." My mother nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "We were wrong, and we have to live with that," she whispered. Hearing those words, I felt the tension inside me ease. This wasn't pleading or the familiar emotional manipulation. For the first time, they spoke without demanding anything in return. My father looked up, his gaze both ashamed and resolute. "We promised to change," he said, "not to get the dealership back, not to regain power or our old positions, just to live decently and not become a burden to you ever again." My mother added softly but clearly, "I'll look for work. Even something small is fine. We don't want to depend on you forever." Those words surprised me. The tension didn't vanish, but for the first time it turned into a faint glimmer of hope. Fragile, but real. I listened in silence without interrupting or arguing. When they finished, I simply nodded lightly. "I understand, but I need time to see it through actions, not promises." I didn't promise forgiveness or step forward to hug them. I knew words meant little now. Only time and the actions that followed could answer everything. The tension remained, but I accepted the weight. This time I wasn't rushing. In the days that followed, I gradually noticed real change in how my parents behaved, how they voluntarily maintained distance and respected the boundaries I had set. My father started looking for work, a manual labor job at a nearby garage, without complaint. My mother helped with housework but didn't interfere with my schedule. They kept their distance, respecting my privacy. No questions about the dealership, no comments on my work. That change surprised me. Tension gave way to growing trust. I also gradually let go of old resentments, giving the family a chance to start over, but with clear limits to avoid repeating past cycles of hurt. I began talking more, sharing small stories about work, and they listened without judgment. I released the grudges but maintained boundaries. "We're starting over, but if the mistakes repeat, I'll stop." They understood. My parents understood and accepted it, demanding nothing more, just quietly trying to live better each day. They didn't ask for more, just tried. My father went to work, my mother learned new recipes. Life gradually warmed. My life entered a new phase, stable, independent, and more peaceful, no longer dominated by the past. The dealership ran well, personal life balanced, with my parents as a new part but healthy. One day, while visiting the dealership to check operations and seeing everything running smoothly, I suddenly recalled the entire journey and drew profound lessons from it. That morning, I arrived to find staff busy and customers plentiful. I remembered the path, from the old man Clarence to the decision to leave, the acquisition, then helping my parents. Looking back at everything that had happened, I understood that power or money never truly determines a person's worth. Numbers can change, positions can be lost, but how one treats others in moments when no one forces kindness, that is what lasts longest. I had witnessed contempt when people thought they were superior and change when everything collapsed. Those moments taught me true value. I also learned that family is only a true refuge when built on respect, fairness, and responsibility. Blood ties don't grant anyone the right to impose, favor, or hurt others and call it love. When love comes with power and distorted expectations, it easily becomes a burden rather than support. Only when each person acknowledges their mistakes and accepts responsibility can a family have a chance to heal. And if there's one thing I want to remind myself, and anyone in a similar situation, it's to set clear boundaries. Be compassionate enough to give others a chance to make amends, but wise enough not to lose yourself again. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the way things were, and love doesn't mean enduring suffering. Sometimes the bravest choice is to move forward slowly, hold firm to principles, and continue living the life you choose for yourself. 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 Yourself.